we good to just hop in? Everybody ready?
Everyone just had
Perfect.
lunch, feeling good?
Right. Hope that we're not too sleepy out there. Wonderful. Well, my name is Hannah Lang. I am a business journalist here in Charlotte. Covered banking here in the city for a few years, so really happy to be here chatting about fintech and wealth tech with all of you. This is Brandon. I'll let you maybe introduce yourself a little bit before we get started.
Cool. I'm Brandon Krieg. I live in New York City. I'm a co-founder of Stash. We are an investing company that helps people build and save wealth for the long term. It's been incredible. We started the company about 8 years ago now, just a bit over 8 years ago, as a subscription business. And we have over $3 billion that's been saved on the platform now, and over 2 million subscribers, active subscribers on the platform.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, I wanted to go back sort of to the beginning of that journey and talk to you a little bit about Stash and how you came up with the idea for that. So it's been 8 years now. I'd love if you could just tell me a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about the sort of hole in the marketplace that you identified and what led you to Stash as the solution for this.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a wild story, at least when I think back now to the craziness that I've lived in for the last 25 years. You know, I helped start one of the first algorithmic trading companies on Wall Street in 1998, when stocks were mostly traded by humans and over the phone. And I remember back when I first started, all of my friends and most of my family started asking me money questions because I worked on, quote, Wall Street, even though I was coding. And we started building out this business, and the business got, quite large. It got acquired, and then I ended up working and building a new business inside of a global bank. And when I worked inside the global bank, even people that worked inside of this bank started asking me questions about where they should put their extra money, what they should invest in, just a lot of money questions. And I ended up meeting a guy that worked with me at this bank, and we decided that we wanted to see how real these questions were if we actually went and asked people on the street. And I remember one day we started walking around Midtown Manhattan, and we'd just start walking up to strangers and we'd say, do you invest and do you save? And pretty much every single person that we spoke to said no. But they always followed it up with, I never learned this stuff at home from my parents, and I never learned about it at school, so I'll do it later. And then we also kept hearing, I'll do it later when I'm rich. So we used to say to people, what does that mean? What does rich mean to you? And no one could ever answer the question. They would just say, I don't know what that is, but I'll do it later. And we said to ourselves that we're either really smart or really lucky. I think we were more lucky than smart at the time, but we ended up figuring out that this problem affects hundreds of millions of people in the US and billions globally, and it's pretty much all the same problem, which is we have a financial literacy problem, at least in America, and the wealth management industry is catering towards the rich. And we resigned from our jobs and started Stash, and that's the journey we've been on to start it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I hear those concerns a lot from folks myself, so I can imagine, but very interesting to get started with. And I wanted that gap in wealth management advice and knowledge that you mentioned. I'm sure in your work with Stash, you encounter a lot of, like you mentioned, misconceptions about wealth management and what it takes to build wealth, and who can build wealth, who can invest, and what investing looks like. I'm curious how you all have reached those people that have categorized themselves as not investors or not savers or not somebody who would ever have wealth in the way that we describe it. How do you reach those people? What have been some of the biggest obstacles in getting to those folks?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of misconceptions about money and how to build wealth. We purposely built the worst day trading app you could ever use. So people don't come to Stash to day trade, and we make it very clear that investing is a long-term thing. You're not coming to Stash to get rich quick. If that's what you want, not with us. And so we kind of modeled ourselves after a private bank, and we said to ourselves that we wanted to be the private bank for everyday Americans. And we did that by becoming a registered investment advisor so that we could actually give out advice, but give it out digitally. And for the misconceptions is normally, I don't have enough money or I need to be rich. And so what we did is we started our minimum at $5. And people will start with $5, but they're doing something they've never done, but they're learning as they're doing. And it's the same concept that like we think about a lot with weight loss. You know, if you need to lose 30 pounds, going on a binge crash diet most likely isn't going to work. But you can lose 1 single pound and get on a path to losing the 30 if you celebrate every single pound as a huge win. And the same model applies to everyday Americans. If you start someone off with $5 and they get on a journey with something we call auto stash, which is recurring saving and investing, then all of a sudden 5 becomes 10, becomes 15, and over time it grows because we're not pressuring you to give us all your money at one time because most people don't have any money to give. But getting on that journey of saving and investing is a very powerful thing when you frame it long-term and center it around advice and education.
Absolutely, and one thing that you all are dealing with that maybe not a lot of other fintechs are is that education gap that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you all have gone about that, if it's something where folks are primarily learning by doing, or if there are other ways that you're trying to address those holes in knowledge, because as you mentioned, this is not something we have any sort of system for in America. It's pretty much directly passed down by your parents if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So how have you gone about sort of bridging that educational gap as well?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, it's STEM. We use STEM. I mean, if you look at how children learn, you know, engineering, they learn how to build a bridge by tinkering and building a bridge with toys. And, you know, the expectation that, you know, you throw a book at someone, go, hey, or go read this and figure it out and then come back and do it, that's not gonna happen. I think I just heard the average attention span right now is, I think, 7 seconds. So asking someone to read a, you know, 100-page book around something that they don't even understand is just, it's futile. But if you say to someone, look, you're gonna start with $5, you can afford that, and as you're doing these actions, you're gonna learn. So you're gonna learn dollar cost averaging because you are dollar cost averaging. You're gonna learn about diversification because you are diversifying. And you know, we have a banking product that we launched and a debit card inside of Stash. It's been out for several years now. It's really powerful because it's not about us pushing you to spend more on our debit card. It's wrapped in something called Stockback. And Stockback is a rewards tool that rewards you with stock every single time you spend. So if you go to Starbucks, like I just did, and you swipe it, you get Starbucks stock as a reward. If you buy gas at Chevron, you get Chevron stock, and it works everywhere it's public. And the powerful tool about that, or the reason behind it, is that you are learning about the world around you as you're going about your everyday spend. And you're becoming an owner in brands and companies that you spend money at. So it's not only a powerful tool to build wealth and to learn, but you're actually discovering that you can think like an owner. And it's one of the elements of STEM that just is incorporated in this product.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that debit card, which I think is a really unique product in the sense, you know, offering those rewards and company stock.
Yeah.
You mentioned your banking system. You all are able to own your back-end infrastructure through that, which is really exciting. I wanted to talk a little bit about innovation at Stash, because I'm sure that is so core to what you do as well. Yeah. How have you all continued to sort of cultivate that culture of continual innovation, and how do you avoid becoming complacent in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, we're currently about 375 people, all spread out through the US. About 200 of our 375 are engineers. And when you really look at the problems our customers have, there's just a lot of problems to solve. It doesn't stop. We have focused on, you know, really diving into the problems that we think are the biggest ones for our customers. And the thing about it is that, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of what we built is utility. It's plumbing, you know, how to move money, how to buy a stock or an ETF, how to do an ACH transfer, you know, all the stuff around retirement. We built all that. But if I look around this room, like every single person in this room has something different that they worry about when it comes to money. So you can't treat every person the exact same way. So I look at Stash, and it's really a collection of pretty awesome financial products that's wrapped, and the wrapper is what matters. The wrapper is what gives you advice and has context and can deliver what you need versus just giving everybody the exact same thing, which inherently doesn't work. So there's no shortage of innovation. You know, I think the other part is that we are regulated and we still have rules, right? So we can do all kinds of really cool stuff, but we still have to follow the rules. So that makes innovating in financial services hard.
Right.
And you have to be, you know, you really have to think through everything you do.
Right. Right, puts parameters on it, so to
Yeah.
speak. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned you're anticipating all of my questions. So,
Cool.
you mentioned sort of having that customer first mentality, which I know has been super core to Stash and to everything that you all have done. You talked a little bit about it just then, but I'd love to hear more about what that looks like in practice for you all. How you're sort of channeling that same spirit of going out into Midtown and asking random people on the street about their money. How that spirit ends up in what you do today.
Yeah, this is one of those entrepreneur, founder bias problems, is that, I, quite frankly, and I laugh about it now, I had no business being in consumer finance. I mean, I ran a high-speed trading business for 15 years. And I went into how to build the business with the kind of my own preconceived notions of what I thought, like how the business model would work and how we would apply it. And I thought that building it just the same way that wealth management businesses build based on assets. So the more assets you have, the more you pay us. But very quickly we figured out that that's not going to work because it's going to break the bond of trust that we need to have with everyday Americans who don't have any extra money. So we kind of set out building a business model that is very aligned with our consumer because we built a subscription business so that your behavior and the way you use Stash doesn't always benefit us. So I'm not pushing you to trade more because trading's free, but I make PFOF. Or I'm not trying to get you to spend more money on the debit card or buy things that you don't need so I can generate more interchange revenue. So being a subscription model has been very powerful for us because it's allowed us to be very aligned in the success and the outcome of our customer. And it's kind of like a wrapper for the whole business. It's been a good North Star and grounding for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to pivot a little bit and talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which you've spoken very publicly about that being sort of core to what you all do at Stash, especially at a place where the focus is on building wealth, and in America and other places, that's so closely tied to racial equity, among other causes.
Yeah.
I was curious, as a leader in your time at Stash, how you've gone about weaving DEI truly into the fabric of the business, especially at a company where that seems so critical to understanding the market that you all are going for.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. I mean, I spent many, many years in the trading side and was 99.9% older white men.
Right.
I'm an older white man. I can tell you that if you try to build a business that is serving everyday Americans, and it's not going to line up. And diversity in a consumer business, especially like Stash, is really, really important because we have to have lots of different points of views and different backgrounds and different upbringings that can relate to the customer that we're trying to serve. And if I look at, we look at this all the time. If you look at the customer base of Stash, it's incredibly diverse. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm also proud of the team that we're building. I think that we're always striving to do better in DEI. We're going to keep doing better. But I'm proud of the team that we have. We have just an incredible team that comes from lots of different backgrounds and brings a lot of really unique perspective to how we ultimately solve the problems for our customers. And that's where it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of leadership, you announced earlier this year that you would be stepping down as CEO.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you knew that it was the right time to step back and to pass the torch.
Yeah, I had the bug to build again more. I took the business from founding with my co-founder to north of $100 million, and I have been feeling for a while that Stash is needed also in the workplace. We have been historically direct to consumer, but I couldn't ignore the amount of inbounds I was getting from big enterprise companies saying, hey, I want to give Stash out at work, I want to give it to my employees, and I really wanted to do it myself, like really badly. And so I went out and with my co-founder and our board, and we did a big search around the world, across the globe actually, and we found this incredible woman named Liza Landsman who came in, and I'm so proud to work with her and learn under her, and it's been great. So she's been in the seat since early this year, and I'm already seeing her do all kinds of cool stuff. So it's cool to stay there and get to see how someone takes your baby and grows it up for you. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, so I was about to ask if it was difficult at all to sort of pass over your baby, so to speak, or if you just felt so confident in that transition that wasn't necessarily a part of it.
Yeah, I feel very confident. I mean, I can only hope that I could do a good enough job that she wants to keep me around, I guess. But I'm very happy, and I think we have a really good relationship, which matters especially between my co-founder and Liza and the three of us, and we do. So it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you personally are shifting your focus from, these individual investors or consumers that we've been chatting about to that more business side of things.
Yeah.
What has that looked like for you? What has been some unexpected parts of that transition? Do you find that a lot of the same things that you learned building Stash for everyday consumers is translating very well, or?
It is. There's so many things that I've learned over the last 4 or 5 months that have just blown my mind. When you go out and you talk to people that work like at Stash about their 401k, it's like, of course I'm getting a 401k. It's expected, and people understand it. When you go to hospitality, logistics, manufacturing employees, and you ask them about it, they're like, well, shit, I don't even qualify for it until I work here for a year. But yet the average retention of a hospitality worker is less than a year. And so the second thing is, a lot of people know that they want to save for retirement, but they have problems right now. They can't afford to put money away for later when they're trying to get through month to month right now. And inflation has been rampant, as everyone knows. I think it's definitely, there's a lot of data that's coming and saying it's getting a little easier for the average American family to put food on the table now, but still, and so we figured out that there's a beautiful sweet spot to bring financial services to the workplace that actually can help reduce employees' stress and help retention, and ultimately just help more people. Yeah. I'll steal Liza's quote, but I think it's important that at Stash we remember, like, I don't care how you meet your significant other as long as you meet them. And for us, it's about just meeting more people, whether we meet them through a friend that refers them to Stash, or on an Instagram ad, or directly at work. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the pandemic there and sort of how that has shaped things for you in this particular piece of the business. But I think we would be unwise to skip over the fact that I'm sure that's had huge impact on everyday Americans and on Stash as that being your core customer base. So what impact did you see on Stash throughout the course of the pandemic? What did that journey look like for you? Was there more demand than you expected for this? Or was it, I guess, a double-edged sword in terms of there being more need?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for like hours and hours because the pandemic was crazy. But we went into the pandemic, I was freaking out, to be quite frank, because nobody knew, right? I had no idea. I spent my whole life building this thing, and I was like, well, not my whole life, but many years building it, and I was like, I hope it works. I think it's going to work. And I think what we realized is that, the business took off. I mean, we doubled our assets. We went from, I think we added $1 billion in the first year. Thing is, that money's still there. We crossed $3 billion this year, and the assets keep growing. I think what the big learning that we took away from a lot of this is that most Americans weren't prepared before the pandemic for any type of financial calamity that would happen. And COVID woke people up saying, I have to do something. Like, now I really have to do something. I have to either have an emergency fund, which you can build in Stash, or put money away in a IRA or some type of savings vehicle, or do something where if this happens again, I'm a little bit more prepared. And so I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of people. I mean, people that are making 6 figures, hopefully were prepared, but most people were not prepared for this. Right. And this is a wake-up call for a lot of people, including us, about the importance that we serve for our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you all have more than 2 million active subscribers right now, a new leader. What's next for Stash? Where do you see this going? How big do you want to be?
Yeah, we're in simple mode right now, which is nice because we spent a lot of time building, and we've been building for years and years now. We built lots of different components of Stash that we think at least form the basis for really helping our customer, our subscriber. There's tons of stuff that we want to do in the future. We want to move into credit and lending. Like, not now, we will eventually. Right now, we're just going through a cleansing. We're really looking at our experiences and cleaning them up. We're taking a lot more feedback from our customers and just putting it into the product. So, and our engineering team is like relieved because we're giving ourselves time to go in and just clean up things that we moved really fast building. And this at the end of last year was big for us. We finally, after a lot of work, put out our own banking core, our banking infrastructure. We're not a bank, we have an incredible bank partner, but we run and own the technology that drives it, and spent a lot of time building all of that from scratch. That's now baked in the market for, call it 8 months. So it's nice to be able to just do a bit of a cleanse.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've got some really great questions from the audience here that I'll pivot to in just a moment. Y'all are giving me a run for my money. These are better than some of the ones I wrote. But last thing I wanted to ask you is, what advice would you give an aspiring or sort of early stage founder, especially somebody who might be trying to build a fintech company focused on those communities traditionally underserved or untapped by this industry?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. I give it out a lot, the advice a lot. I think it's about simplicity. I think it's really, really easy to build lots and lots of things, but it's really, really hard to keep it simple. I think, the success of especially, well, any size company, but especially in the early stages, it's keeping it simple because people will keep asking for things and asking for things. As long as you're on the problem and you're solving the actual problem that you set out to solve, simplicity is magic. It's goodness. And a lot of companies get away from that, especially in the early stages, which messes them up really badly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll pivot to a couple questions from the audience. Let's see. I'll go with, what are the biggest challenges that you see for Stash in the next 2 years, so in the near term, and then in the next 5 years, maybe a bit longer term, especially as it relates to the current macroeconomic and technology environments?
Yeah. I'm surprised that wasn't an AI question. I get asked that question a lot.
You can give an AI answer if you want.
There'll be AI in there. We don't tout it, but we already kind of use models to set context for the advice we deliver. But for us, there's no shortage of things that we need to build. So the next 5-10 years is going to be continuing to grow and scale, and we have a business that has north of 70% gross margins. So we have a good underlying business inside of Stash. It's about continuing to add more subscribers. On an average day, we have between 5,000 and 10,000 subscribers signing up every single day, and it doesn't slow down because the problem that we're solving isn't come here and day trade, come here and try to get rich quick, come here and buy some crypto coin that might not exist next week. It's about come here and set yourself up for long-term wealth success. So that might mean you put $5 away every week and you're diversifying it. That might mean that we're investing for you through our smart portfolio that we manage. That alone is an incredible business that has no shortage of customers and growth to it. So it's just going to be about continuing to just listen to our customers and only solve the problems that our customers have. That's really what we're going to keep doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe going off of the whole AI element of that, I hear this a lot as somebody who wrote about banking and went into bank branches about the human element of finance and how it's important to sort of have a person involved at different parts of the process and how that relationship is really irreplaceable in a way. And I have a question here about how you all integrate that human element into the way that you provide advice, education, or other support for your customers.
Yeah, look, I personally don't think that, for the high net worth people in this country, that wealth managers are going to go away. I think that's going to stay, and I now know this after years of doing this, that rich people want to talk to someone on the phone, and that will likely continue. I don't see that ending. But technology has helped companies like Stash make investing and advice approachable to millions and millions of people. That's not going to stop. And I think, leveraging different types of AI, different types of context can help only make these experiences better and more relevant. And that's where it gets magical, right? Because again, if you're going to give advice out to someone who's 18 years old, single, living in their parents' basement, who doesn't have a job, you probably don't need to sell them life insurance. And you really got to understand who you're serving and deliver that properly. AI will help with that. In financial services, AI is magical, though, at detecting fraud, at helping onboarding, at KYC. Those are elements of AI that are amazing. And I think AI for the consumer face of it, I know there's lots of companies raising money now for it. I'm curious how it plays out. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we're just a reimagination of what that advising looks like, and maybe not everybody has to have their own in-person wealth advisor. Is that sort of what you're thinking of, or is that still a piece of it, I guess? I
mean, humans want to be paid a lot of money.
Right.
So, I mean, the problem is if you have, $50 and you walk into a bank branch and you want to take an hour of time of the advisor, it's never going to happen. Right. So that's just a reality, right? And so but they still deserve to be served. And for too
Yes.
long, these customers weren't served. So technology and the power of that technology, to harness technology, is to be able to deliver things that rich people get and do it at scale. Everyone deserves to be treated, with kindness, and to give them a little bit of hope that they can build a great business. That's why it's funny, like for Stash, there's a lot of altruism and then there's capitalism. I've never seen a business that they both can survive together and they can work in harmony. We are capitalists. I want to build a big business that is worth a lot of money, but I also think you don't need to sell out to help people at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple more questions here. First is the vision for Stash to be the only financial interface a person needs? So is serving every need a part of the eventual vision, I guess, for you?
Yeah, it's already happening for a lot of people. we are, a lot of people use it as a primary bank account. It's the only money they have saved, and that's for most of the customers we have. We don't right now help with lending or credit, although we're thinking about how to do it in a responsible way inside of a subscription, which I think is going to be very powerful and very disruptive when we do launch it down the road. And that's the plan, is to be there more and more. But at the same time, we have to do it the right way. We have to do it methodically. We can't just slam in a bunch of features and just have the app be chaotic. That's not going to work.
Right.
Because there's beauty and simplicity, and that's what people expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a personal stake in this question. What advice would you give somebody in their 20s as they try to plan their financial lives, save for retirement? Is it ever too early to start saving? I'll maybe broaden that to say, what advice would you give those folks that you found on the street in Midtown that thought that they were not wealthy enough to start really planning for their future, that they weren't the type of person that could build wealth?
I'll say it with a joke, although remember, I think I'm funny, but my wife tells me I'm not funny. But a lot of if you go on Google and you read about like tips to build wealth in your 20s, a lot of it's like, don't have that morning coffee, save that money. And my view has always been, absolutely have that morning coffee. Otherwise, you're not going to be so nice at work, and maybe you'll get skipped over for promotion or a pay increase. And I think it's really about mastering your work and focusing on doing the best job that you can and growing your skills and trying to grow your career and actively taking a role in saving money. Now, I'm totally self-made. I moved to New York with $300, and I remember when I first moved to New York, ING Direct was coming out with that, the first, I don't know if anyone knows the first internet savings account. And I just started taking a little bit of my paycheck, a little pay we were getting, because we were putting all the money back in the business, and just saving a little bit. And then over time, as I grew and started making more money, I just kept upping that. And then I eventually moved it to Vanguard, and that money, I still do it. Even though I co-founded Stash, I still have that habit of putting that money away every 2 weeks. I think it's just about getting into a routine of focusing on your work and trying to do the best job that you can at work. And then, that's the path.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would like to thank you for validating my daily coffee habit. I appreciate that. I think that's all the questions that we had. So unless anybody has any out in the audience, I think that we can wrap up there.
Cool.
So, awesome. Oh, yeah, we've got one over here.
Yeah, we're open to it. As you can tell by my title, we haven't really focused on looking out too much. Now we are. So financial literacy is really important. So yes, I would love to talk about it. Absolutely. Please.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. This was a wonderful conversation.
Cool.
And thank you, Brandon, for
Thank
sharing
you.
with us. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Here's my water.
The Next Frontier, Navigating the Future of Crypto and Decentralized Finance.